Hello, chess fans. Welcome to 101 Ways to Win or Lose a Game of Chess. I am your host, Onyx Chess, and today we're going to look at the most fundamental issue in chess that I can think of off the top of my head, and that is that of pawn structure. The topic of pawn structure is huge. There's lots to it. You've got your passed pawns, you've got your doubled pawns, you've got your backwards pawns, and then you've got the way that the pawns relate with each different piece. You've got pawn formations as relates to rooks, pawn formations as relates to bishops, pawn formations as relates to knights, and you've got pawn formations as relates to kings. It's the latter that we're going to talk about today. It's probably the most expansive one of them all, and it might even be one of the more complicated ones. In fact, I think it is. So we're going to knock this one out first. Not necessarily because it's the hardest, but because it's the most frequent. Okay? When we understand what we're going to cover here today, what we're going to find is that many games that we otherwise would have lost, we will not lose. Those will be our wins or draws instead. We will find that many games that we would have just maybe played simply or played automatic moves, we now have this one more tool, this one more weapon in our arsenal of consideration and argument to go ahead and implement in whatever positions that we find ourselves in. This is something that happens so often. We find so many different fundamental, what you want to call them, chapters, fundamental ideas. We find, I'm talking about things like, Philidor's defense and Santa Bridge and all these kinds of different, ideas that we see named on the chessboard, but none of them happen often. Literally none of them. Literally none of them happen often. In fact, until you revisit some of these things so many times, it's you forget it just in time for it to show up the next game. So you'll study something, you'll say, that's how I should have handled that situation. Okay, I'll try and remember that, yeah. And then you play 50 games, and you forget it on the 49th, what you learned, 3 months ago about that one little thing, how to play that one little way. And then, on the 50th, here comes that situation again. Yeah, so again, you forgot it just in time to lose a game. And then you go rehash it, restudy it. Oh, yeah, that's what it was again, and so on and so on. At least for those of us with normal/bad memories, that's very typical. So an understanding is very important. This can't be a matter of regurgitation for most of chess. But with this, the pawn structures as relates to kings, this understanding here is actually something that doesn't show up once every 50 moves. It's something that shows up almost every game. All right, on one level or another, the dynamics of your pawn formation and how it relates to your king are going to be a huge determining factor, if not the most and most frequent, most powerful and most frequent kind of a thing that you see. So this should certainly, if you haven't seen this before, this should certainly go a long way to boosting your rating, plain and simple. All right, so and I want to present this in a way that it's understood. Most definitely, comments, concerns, questions, anything else, let me know. But let's begin. So here we are in this game that I played some time ago. It's white to move, and you can see a few different things here. I mean, the most glaring thing is going to be that f4 pawn, where we see that black's king is going to be tied down to defending against that pawn forever. All right, so this means that this king can, never do any kind of an escort invasion here where we're worried about pawns queening on the queen side. No, it's not going to happen. All right, this is a game that white cannot possibly lose. So that's clear. But black still needs to play a little bit carefully. There's some tricks here involved with this pawn structure that are a little bit tactical and a little bit tricky. If black doesn't play carefully, if black misunderstands the situation, things can go wrong in a hurry. So there's a fundamental rule with pawn formations as relates to kings, king pawn endings, that that I want everyone to really like focus on, and that's to say this: pawns run out of moves. All right. So barring this pawn queening, pawns will always run out of moves, and that's the flip side of a coin, which is another fact, which is to say, kings have to move. Your king will have to move from the square it's on. If you're in a king pawn ending, your king will have to move from the square it's on. All right. In this kind of situation, it wouldn't. You've got opposite colored bishops on. So theoretically, these kings would never have to move from the squares. So this is a completely different ending. Completely. This is why we hear it said so often, well, opposite colored bishops are often a draw. And this is why. It's because those bishops can move forever. The kings don't have to move from their squares. And I can't tell you the amount of games where one side or the other has been up 2 pawns and there's no win. It's literally a draw. There's nothing you can do. There's nothing you can do. It's a straight stone cold draw, even though one side or the other might be up 2 pawns. All right. So this is where that's coming from. All right. And this is why they say it's a different story if those bishops are on the same square. Because what can happen when those bishops are on the same square is one side or the other can engineer a trading of the bishops. So something like my bishop takes your bishop, your king takes my bishop, or pawn takes my bishop, and now it's me to move. And that's a big deal. That's a huge deal. Because this is where we really begin the lecture. All right, I wanted to actually show you this. I'm doing everything completely backwards. I wanted to go start to finish so I could show you all of the fundamental ingredients and then show you the cake at the end and say, so you see the ingredients and you see the cake. I'm going to do this exactly backwards. I think we're going to learn this much better if we start at the end so that we know what we're talking about the whole way through. So just keep this in mind. What have I said? Anything particularly complicated? I've stated really just one fact, which is in king pawn endings, your king has to move. Pawns are out of moves, and your king will have to move. And depending on if it's black's king to move in a certain instance or white's king to move in a certain instance, that's going to be the difference between the win and the loss. And that's what we're going to pay attention to, because as far as pawn structures go, this is what we see probably the most frequently, and it's almost always a game deciding decision or consideration. You see, argument. You see, so it's always something to watch for, even when there are pieces on the board, because they might come off. And then this is what you got. And now that you got this, you understand how is it set up? Is it set up to your advantage or not? You know, this is where they say study the end game, and that way when you're in your middle game, you can manipulate the board so that it goes into a favorable end game. So study the end game first and work backwards like that. Well, I mean, this is where it's coming from. It's exactly what it's talking about, right? So this is a simple fundamental. Let's look at it. In this game, white moves e3 here. I mean, very simple, kind of logical. Take some space. I don't know, maybe hope for some, escorting business on the f4, f5, something. I don't know, whatever. Take some space, no big deal. And we see black play c5. So it's looking like c5 is, it's looking like black is hoping that maybe he can play for some kind of a numerical 4-on-3 pawn advantage here and set up a passed pawn, and then hopefully, I don't know, maybe queen something on a1, b1, c1, where he'll still have time to rush the king back and, stop, f4 from queening or something like that. That's what it looks like's going on here. And hey, fair enough. Still, objectively speaking, this is, obviously a completely drawn position with accurate play, but it's to note white can't lose. All right, black's gonna forever be tied down to the defense of this pawn. White can always defend against any queenside pawn pushes. This is objectively drawn. Okay. But here already, white is looking at certain variations, and they all have to do with pawns. Because white is already starting to notice that, all things equal, that f4 pawn still controls the e5 square. All right. And that's a little bit significant, because while we might not have seen it so clearly when that pawn was still on c7, now that it's on c5, maybe you can see it a little bit more clearly now. What that means, that pawn controls e5, as relates to the fact of the matter that pawns run out of moves, and then the king will have to move. Where can black's king move here? Just looking at it, just assuming it's black to move, and the pawns are locked and he can't move a pawn and blah blah blah. 3 squares, and that's it. Black would have to move back, and that would be very bad news, right? Because if black's king is forced back this way, white's gonna, take e4 here, and from there, f5, king f4, and black's gonna be lost. All right, so that's what white sees right here, just looking at the pawn formation. This is 100% pawn formation, and this is the power of them. You understand? So white's just wondering if there's some way that, you can make it so that the pawns lock up with it being black to move. If it's white to move, different story. White has to move back somewhere, and then that's going to be a certain draw with accurate play from black. Continuing. White knows that there's no chance for a loss here. White understands f5, f6, f7, and f8 is going to end the game if black gets over ambitious and tries, to move his king to the queen side of the board with any kind of support these pawns. So white can't lose. White has nothing to lose. Looking at the variations, it seems fairly simple. This is what I was thinking. It's real easy. If I play a4, he plays a5, it's white to move back. Correct? Right. If I try and play tricky and play a3, white plays a6, what can I move here? What can I do? What other move here? Just no. What here? No. So the only other move I would have in this variation that I can really see is just king back. Or a4. So what? A4, a5. We're right back to white has to move back. So in all variations, it looks like king has to pretty much move back. And it was for no other reason other than that I played b3. Now I looked at b4. I saw the en passant, a takes back. And we've got this 3-on-2 majority, which white is not worried about. Black cannot queen win the game because of the f-pawn. But this looks like a complete draw no matter what as well. Alright? But I did diagnose that, who knows? Let's play b3 because that's the only one that doesn't obviously lose right away. And see what black does. And when black played a different move, other than the expected c takes b, where black would have been fine with the pawn majority there. Now, hang on a sec, what's changing the position, right? And this is actually what we found ourselves looking at in this game, where now, after b takes c, there's an interesting problem for black here. And as a side lesson, every bit as important as anything we've discussed up till now is to say you can't be dogmatic in your thinking. You can't listen to master players state rules, or read books that state rules, and take that as some kind of a dogmatic gospel that you need to adhere to all the time if you want to win chess games. No. In fact, it's the exact opposite of that. Yes, we are told it's best not to usually double pawns if we can avoid it, if it makes sense. If it's all things equal, should I double this pawn or not? Maybe I shouldn't. All things equal, don't double your pawns. But you have to see if the tactics are justifying the fundamental decisions and the fundamental arguments that you are making, right? So here, I mean, you can just look at it and see right quick. If black tries to take with the king in order to keep those pawns proper, quote unquote, white has a winning move, right, with e4, real simple, and that's the end of the game. Black can no longer get back to the defense of the f5, f6, f7, f8 push, and that's game over. All right, so black saw this in the game actually and didn't play that way. Black played correctly. Black doubled his pawns. Where now we have that exact scenario that I was talking about, where pawns run out of moves. It's inevitable. Unless a pawn queens, that's it. It's going to run out of a move. It's going to get locked up, and one or the other king will have to move first, right? So once again, we see here it's white to move. So if white a4, black a5. If white a3, black a6. White a4, black a5. And no matter what, it's white to move. Okay? And so this is looking drawn as drawn can be. In the game, I moved back to f2. Alright? But black needs to be careful and not mistake the situation here. Alright? And this is a fundamental thing when we're looking at these pawns. It's not deep. Understand this. It's not like we have to look 20 moves deep. This is not a depth perception issue. This is just, I think, maybe not quite respecting what pawns do where they sit. Okay, this is a matter of not respecting the pawn fundamentals. And don't get me wrong, if I'm at all tired, I would play like black here as well. Alright, so I'm certainly not above the mistake that black made here. But I think all the more that puts me in a position to really teach it and make it clear what went wrong and how it went wrong. Alright, so can you spot the losing move for black? That's right. e4 loses immediately. Okay? And if we're too quick, the idea is, well, I'm just going to take some space and play opposition games with this white king and mitigate this white king to the second row, and I'll you know, inhabit the fourth row, and this is a draw and we can shake hands, right? Well, wrong. That's not quite right, because can you really inhabit the fourth row? That's the question. If you could inhabit that fourth row, there's nothing wrong with that idea. I think that's true. But can you inhabit that fourth row? Because after e2, what we see here is that black can't stay on the fourth at all. Black actually has to move back. All right. Black wastes time to hope there's a tempo trick here that could make it my move again. I don't think it would matter either way, because no matter what, my king would be coming straight back to the e3 no matter what. But no matter what, he's, I think, realized that the issue here, and okay, so king wastes a couple tempo, pawn wastes a couple tempo. It's black to move again. Black can't inhabit that fourth. Black has to move back. And whether black moves back to d5 or f5 is no matter. It's the exact same problem. Which is what? King to e3. And that's it. That's it. Okay? No matter what, black was having to move back to one of these squares. No matter what. Alright, that's the deal. Okay, so if we go back a few moves, the second he tried to take space in e4, and this is often the case, is we're trying to do something. I know with somebody else we discussed an e5 push. It was supported by an e4 pawn that was protected for the moment. But we looked at it and we said, maybe that's a little too quick. Maybe that gets undermined too fast and too easily. So we're trying to do something like take space with the e5. We're trying to do something like take space in center with the e5 push. But in doing like the obvious thing, we're actually doing the exact opposite, where e5 is undermined in short order, and we actually end up losing the center and the space that we had. You see, and it's this exact same thing here. Black thinks it's going to take some space and hold the white king in opposition, and we'll discuss opposition in a moment. But it's the exact opposite. You have to understand this. With black moving to e4, he's actually condemned his king to having to move back all the way to the 6th row. That's what e4 does. It puts his king on the 6th row. Forced, absolutely forced. No matter what, it puts his king on the 6th row. That's what you need to see. Alright, this is pawn structure formation. This is the power of these pawns. Alright, so they're not impossible to navigate. This isn't, some deep like the abyss kind of it's so hopeless I'll never get it. No, it's not that bad. It's really not, because we can see this. I mean, we can see this. Just look. You just have to look at it. Tactically justify your fundamentals. What's a fundamental? Hey, I want to take some space on that king. I want to really force this into a draw, and let's just get this done with. Okay, how would you like to do that? I would like to do that by advancing my king to e4 and taking space and hopefully holding his king to opposition. Okay, well, check it with the tactics. Listen, we want to use our fundamentals to dream up the best ideas, but the tactics have got to justify our dreams. So we dream as far as the tactics allow. Alright, and that's the thing. White can see okay, or pardon me, black can see okay. e4, white plays say e2. Okay, I'm gonna have to play say back to there or there. Okay, and then white's gonna take that space back. Okay, and then where can I move? Here. So then black says, okay, so I won't go back to f5. I'm going to go back to d5 instead. Same problem. Then white's going to go e3. And then where can I move? Here. No matter what, by playing that the blunder of e4, we've condemned our king to actually losing space. So what's the correct way to navigate this then? Black just simply needs to understand exactly what he's just looked at in terms of the tactics involved after king to e4, and when king when king back to f2, instead of playing king to e4, simply playing to keep the white king out of the e4 square. That's all black needs to think about right now. That's it. So if the white king moves to f2, then the king can go e6, king can go d6. The whole point is what? That when the king comes back to e3, black plays back to d5, and that's it. This is total stone cold draw. Okay? No matter what. But just watch what white's doing. Right? If white wants to play tricky, back to d2. Okay, let's try again. Back to d6. Now white plays to e2. Careful, don't play moves like king to d5. We've misunderstood the situation again. Once again, we've not taken the time to just look 2-3 tactical steps deep, right? King back to e3. Now it's black to move, and that's it. So this is once again one of those trigger positions that we talk so much of, where we just understand fundamentally. Okay, look, when that king is ready to come to e3, my king needs to be ready to come to d5. That's it. It's that simple. So no matter what this king does, let's go back a few here. No matter what this white king does, so long as when it's ready to come to e3, black is ready to come to d5, that's what makes this a draw. You understand? So black can comfortably understand that just in between these 3 squares, all he wants, there's no tempo burn, there's no triangulation, there's nothing going on here except stone cold draw. Just make sure that when king is ready to move to the e3, that this guy's ready to move to the d5. Alright, so if this king wants to do all of this stuff and get tricky and blah 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 blah, black has no worries. He can just in between all of this business here, these squares. That's it. Just so long as that when this white king comes to these 3 squares and gets ready to move up into e3, that this king's ready to move into d5. Stone cold draw. Alright, so that's the better move. Not e4, but just simply moving that king back and understanding the situation, the dynamics of the pawn structure, which is what we're here to discuss, right? If black had just finished this lecture, I would have had a draw game instead of a win. The game played out. I don't think we have to finish it. It resigned after a few more moves, and that was that. So let's move to the next example then that we want to look at, which is king opposition. We mentioned king opposition before, and it's real simple. White wants to get to the 8th. By the way, ignore these pawns. Forget them. Pretend they don't exist. They're not on the board. Just ignore them. Opposition. So, the white king wants to get to the 8th row. Alright. Simple question. Can the white king get there? After taking a short look at this, we realize, well, that depends on whose move it is. Right? If it's white to move now, no, white will never get to that 8th row, because this black king is just going to be a goalie all day long. Alright? You can see how the black king stops the white king from progressing. That the white king is looking at a wall. Alright? So the black is being a goalie. Right? No matter what the white king does, but if white wants to get tricky like that, black just takes that opposite. It's called opposition. Alright, so he's the goalie. White can't move past. White to move, white can't move past. White wants to get tricky, black just, boom, takes opposition. Okay, so that's what it's called. This is called opposition when kings are, direct oppositions when kings at 1 square in between. They're directly across from each other like this. And opposition, when you take opposition, just means goalie. It's probably the best word to describe it. So sometimes there's winning ideas in taking opposition, winning ideas in losing opposition. So in this case, if it's white's goal to get to the other side, then yeah, he can't do that so long as black keeps opposition. If black misplays, like something like this, instead of taking that opposition back, now white has opposition. Now white can get there. If black tries to stop this white king from getting to the other side, it can't be done. Because now you can see who steps into opposition. Who's the goalie now? Now white's the goalie. And black has to move. Step aside, black. See? Now who's the goalie? Step aside, black. Black wants to get slick. No problem. Just always taking opposition. Just black to move again. Okay, there's nothing black can do to ever stop that white king from getting to the other side. Okay, so that's all it's about. It's nothing crazy. It's just a matter of saying, hey, black has the wall and white can't get past because it's white's turn to try. He can't get past that wall. All right. If it was black to move here, then it's to say black has to move his wall. And then black can get past. White can then get past. You can think of it that way. You know, wall. Even wall is a better word than opposition. You know. But as long as white takes opposition, black has to move that wall. Right? As long as black takes opposition, then white can't get past that wall. Then black's putting up a wall. Okay? Little simple idea. No big deal. One more application here and we'll be done. This is a world famous chess puzzle. White to move and win. What's the move? That's right. King to g2 is the correct move. If we try something else like d4, then while white can rush to the defense of the d4 pawn, that's about all it can do. Black simply moves back, takes opposition, and white has no kind of ingress to get past this king. The idea for white here would be to somehow escort the d-pawn into a queen by you'd have to get past the black king in order to do that. So that's the idea, and as long as black keeps opposition against that white king, it should be fine and it should be a draw. So here white maybe plays back behind the pawn and simply black blocks that pawn. Okay, forces a king move. King can move here or here. Let's say king tries the other side, maybe has better luck. No big deal. Black just moves back. Alright, so white sees, okay, you try this. Nope, same thing, same problem. Alright, so there's nothing to really hope for. White pushes the pawn. Just moves straight back behind the pawn. Same thing, we've been here before. Okay, white pushes pawn. Back behind the pawn. Black moves straight back. Careful. Careful with this stuff now. Black does something different. Now white has taken the opposition. We don't want that. Remember that. We want black to be the one taking opposition, if anything, not white. So that's kind of a key. Right? Don't let white take opposition like that. That's going to be game over. Right? White takes opposition. Black realizes that he's misplayed the position. He's forced out. And then that's game over. So we don't want to go those kinds of variations. Just keep that opposition, right? So to do that, just stay behind the pawn. Real simple. Okay? Straight back. Real simple. Keep opposition. And you're good to go. Alright? Just like this. Stalemate every time. Okay? So that's what happens with the d4. Kind of a variation. With that king getting in there first, what happens is you can see it's a battle once again of opposition. There's two ways this can go. Black can try something like this where, well, you're gonna see. I mean, this is obviously winning, right? If black wants to play here, no big deal. White can actually play e3 or e4. It doesn't matter. Either one is fine. Because after black plays, say here, now who took opposition? White. If black doesn't take opposition and tries to avoid this kind of an opposition here like this, no big deal. We're just going to escort the pawn all the way up. At some point, black has to get in the way, and at that point, white ducks in takes opposition, black has to move, and that's gonna queen every time, you see. So it's all a matter of that opposition. Just understand that much and you're good to go. If black wants to play tricky, there's no kind of trick that black can do. Just take opposition immediately. There's no kind of trick or nothing that black can do. If black wants to play around the issue and try to move like this instead of coming to say c6, no problem, just play opposition, right? So black knows if he moves here, you'll move here, and that'll be opposition. So he might try this. Okay, no problem, just you can do that too, you know. Just take opposition, you'll be fine. Keep that in mind. Nothing can really go wrong in these kinds of endings here. This is it. That's all I wanted to show you. It's all one package. All right, so when we go back to this game, and we're looking at this situation here as black, you know, all of a sudden things have some meaning. All right, and that's really what I wanted to do for you. All right, because I know when you're starting out, pawns don't really seem so important, and it seems almost like a matter of an 8-ball, like magic 8-ball. Will I win this game? Yes or no? Like some random kind of, you know, fluky, lucky kind of a thing going. It's not fluke and it's not luck. It's all fundamentals, all of it. So that was the goal, and I hope it's accomplished. The goal was to take that idea that who wins and loses this kind of an end game is a matter of chance. No, it's a matter of fundamentals. And now, as you make your moves and as you see these kinds of positions on the board, hopefully you'll at least have something to think about where you didn't before, and have some questions to ask that you might not have known to ask, and the answers included, and away you go. That's what chess is about. So if you needed 4 minutes on your clock yesterday to play a game of chess, hopefully today now you can see where you might need 5 or 6. Just to, you know, make sure these kinds of things don't jump up and grab you.